Hey guys, welcome back to Ataria News channel. If you've been following the Linux world, you know that running Android apps on your Linux desktop has always been a bit of a challenge. Sure, there are emulators, but they are slow, clunky, and don't really feel native. That's where Waydroid comes in. And today we're diving deep into version 1.6.0, which just dropped on November 21st, 2025. This release brings some genuinely exciting changes that make the Android on Linux experience significantly better. Before we get into what's new, let me quickly explain what Waydroid actually is for those who might be hearing about it for the first time. Waydroid is a free and open source application written in Python that lets you run a complete Android system on your regular Linux desktop. Now, here's the clever part. Unlike traditional Android emulators that simulate Android hardware and run painfully slow, Waydroid uses something called Linux namespaces. Think of it as running Android in a lightweight container that shares your Linux kernel. This means Android apps run at near native speeds because they're not being emulated at all. They're running directly on your hardware, just isolated in their own little environment. The foundation of Android is built on Android 13, using a customized LineageOS image, which gives you a modern Android experience. Whether you're on Ubuntu, Debian, Fedora, Arch, or pretty much any major Linux distribution, Waydroid has you covered. The beauty of this approach is that you get the best of both worlds. Your favorite Android apps running seamlessly alongside your Linux applications without the performance hit you'd normally expect. Now let's talk about what makes version 1.6.0 special. The headline feature that everyone's been waiting for is desktop notification integration. This might sound simple, but it's actually a game changer. Prior to this release, when an Android app wanted to notify you about something, whether it's a new message, an update, or an alert, that notification will stay trapped inside the Android environment. You'd have to actively check your Android apps to see if anything was happening. That's not how we use our phones, and it's definitely not how we want to use our desktops. Version 1.6.0 introduces a notification manager that forwards Android notifications directly to DBUS, which is the messaging system that Linux desktop environments use to communicate. What this means in practical terms is that when WhatsApp, Telegram, or any other Android app has something to tell you, that notification pops up on your Linux desktop just like it would from any native Linux application. You no longer need to keep the Waydroid window open or constantly check if you have missed anything. The notifications come to you exactly where you expect them. Now, there's a small catch here. To get this notification forwarding to work properly, you'll need to update to a compatible Android system image. The Waydroid team has made these available, so it's just a matter of running the update process. Also, if you're a distribution packager or someone who builds Waydroid from source, you'll need to make sure you're using gbinder Python version 1.3.0 or higher. If you don't, the session manager will crash whenever it tries to handle a notification that contains a picture. That's a pretty special technical detail, but it's important to get right. Let's move on to another significant change that affects how you interact with Waydroid on a daily basis. This one is about security and control. In previous versions, when you started a Waydroid session, ADB, which stands for Android Debug Bridge, would automatically connect. ADB is the tool that lets you install apps, transfer files, run shell commands, and generally tinker with your Android environment. Having it auto connect was convenient, but it wasn't particularly secure. Starting with version 1.6.0, ADB secure mode is toggled on by default and the auto connect behavior is gone. Instead, when you want to connect ADB, you'll need to manually run a new command called waydroid adb connect. But here's the important part. Just running that command isn't enough. You'll also need to provide authorization on the Android side, just like you would if you were connecting your phone to a computer for the first time. You know that prompt that appears on your phone asking if you trust this computer? That's what you'll see in Wade right now. This extra step might seem like a minor inconvenience, but it significantly improves security by ensuring that only authorized connections can access your Android environment. Another thoughtful improvement in this release addresses a problem that's been bugging users for a while. When you install Waydroid, it comes with a bunch of system apps. Things like files, contracts, calculator, music, and camera. These are basic Android utilities that come with the Lineage OS base. The problem is that most Linux users already have perfectly good file managers, calculators, and music players on their Linux desktop. Having duplicate apps with similar or identical names cluttering up your application menu was confusing and annoying. Version 1.6.0 solves this elegantly by hiding these system apps from your desktop application menu by default. The apps are still there if you need them. You can still access them from within the Waydroid full UI, but they won't show up alongside your regular Linux applications anymore. If there's a specific system app that you actually want to use and want it visible in your launcher, you can manually edit its desktop file and switch the no display setting to false. Meanwhile, any Android apps that you manually install, whether from the Play Store or by sideloading, will still appear in your menu as expected. This change makes the whole experience feel much cleaner and more intentional. For those of you who use Waydroid in multi-window mode, and honestly, multi-window mode is one of the best features in Waydroid. There's a nice quality of life improvement here too. In multi-window mode, each Android app runs in its own window, just like native Linux applications. You can minimize them, maximize them, and arrange them however you like. In previous versions, once you enabled multi-window mode, the main Waydroid launcher would sometimes disappear from your app menu, which made it a hassle to access Android settings or launch new apps. Version 1.6.0 ensures that the main Waydroid launcher always stays visible even after you've enabled multi-windows. This makes it much easier to manage your Android environment without having to remember special commands or shortcuts. Speaking of managing your Waydroid environment, there are some new desktop integration features that make common tasks much more convenient. If you right click on the Waydroid entry in your desktop application launcher, you'll now see some helpful actions. One of them is Stop Waydroid, which lets you cleanly shut down your Waydroid session without opening a terminal. This is useful if you want to restart the session or if something's acting up and you need a fresh start. There's also an Initialize Waydroid option in the same right click menu. This one is particularly interesting because it allows you to switch between different Android system images. Specifically, you can toggle between what's called vanilla, which is a pure LineageOS installation without Google services, and GAPPS, which includes the Google Play Store and the Google apps and services. Being able to switch between these configurations without reinstalling everything is a huge time saver, especially if you're trying to decide which setup works best for your needs or if your requirements change over time. Version 1.6.0 also adds a couple of new commands that improve the overall user experience. There's a new command called Waydroid Bug Report that gathers all the relevant logs and diagnostic information into a format that's easy to share with developers if you run into issues. If you've ever tried to troubleshoot a problem and been asked to provide logs, you know how tedious it can be to track down all the right files. This command does all that work for you automatically. There's also a new shortcut where you can just type Waydroid with no arguments and it'll automatically run Waydroid sudo full UI, which launches the full Android interface. It's a small convenience, but it's the kind of polish that makes software feel more refined. On the technical housekeeping side, Waydroid now rotates and trims its log file when it reaches 5 megabytes. This prevents the log from growing indefinitely and eating up your disk space, which is something that could happen over time with older versions if you used Waydroid heavily. The system also makes sure to properly stop the Waydroid session when you log out of your Linux user account. This ensures a clean shutdown and prevents any potential issues with lingering processes or corrupted state. So, to wrap everything up, Waydroid 1.6.0 represents a significant step forward in making Android on Linux feel like a first class experience rather than a clever hack. The notification forwarding finally gives you the real time awareness you need from your Android apps. The improved ADB security gives you better control and peace of mind. The hiding of system apps declutters your application menu and makes the integration feel more polished. The multi window improvements and new desktop actions make day to day usage smoother and more intuitive. If you've tried Waydroid before and found it a bit rough around the edges, version 1.6.0 is absolutely worth another look. If you've never tried Waydroid, but you've been looking for a way to run Android apps on Linux without the performance penalty of traditional emulation, now's a great time to jump in. I have included a step by step installation and setup guide, which you'll find in the description box below. The project is actively developed, the community is growing, and with each release, the experience gets closer to what we all want: seamless integration between Android and Linux. Well, that's it for today, folks. If you found this helpful, make sure to like and subscribe to Italian News channel for more Linux and open source coverage. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.